Regards, and welcome to Ryan Rambles You To Rest, the podcast where I talk at length about matters of nearly no urgent need, nor heavy impact on our daily lives, in the interest of helping you there off to a more peaceful state. Summertime and fall can blend together very slowly in North America. We are still having summery days, even as the light gets darker earlier. We've gotten some rain, and we still have the waning end of fresh summer produce. Our horizon is now the holidays, and what a trio be them: Halloween, Thanksgiving, and National Sock Day. With the holidays comes festivity, friends and family, and most importantly, all sorts of food and fun. Along with the higher probability of inclement weather, much of our time turns inside as the season progresses. But just here, on the cusp, we find our fleeting opportunities to enjoy the outdoors. In the last few weeks, I have attended a lovely family outdoor wedding, gone for a long, misty walk in the park with my partner, rode down the coast for pumpkins, and seized the opportunity to irresponsibly go crazy at the local farmer's market. In this episode, I thought we may concern ourselves with one of the latter two tales and talk about going to the great pumpkin patch along the long, lovely California coast. An amiable amble on the cusp of autumn. Before we begin, I would like to recommend that you subscribe to this show on your podcast platform of choice or YouTube. For news and announcements, follow us on Instagram at Ryan Rambles Pod. Our soundtrack is by Disparition. And so we are here now, at the departure point of our smooth sojourn. Beyond this simple segue lies the semi to mostly known. We are reminded, nevertheless, of the famous tale of adventure wherein one adventurer to the other inquired, "Where do these stairs go?" And in reply said the other, "They go up." Coastal Northern California is host and home to many agricultural hotspots for amazing and delicious natural gifts. But among those we tend to admire, more than consume, the cake we have and do not eat, as it were, are the many gourds and varietals of pumpkin that make their way to our centerpieces, desks, coffee tables, top of the bookshelves, the strange nook in the hallway, and famously, front doorsteps, from late September to November. On a weekend recent, 4 friends into a car convened to tour down the coast of the California dream, To the pinnacle of pumpkin patches they descended, prior to a lunch Michelin recommended. Gourds around the trip revolved, but also they a maze did solve. In an amiable amble, I begin with a thought, idea, or moment to begin the segment, and then I let that take us wherever it may. In this sense, an amiable amble could be the purest form of Ryan Rambles You To Rest, a sleep podcast. It may resemble at moments any of our other regular rambling segments, or perhaps otherwise extend our journeys into new territory. For now, let's begin with the beauty of the San Francisco Bay Peninsula coastline. It is indeed a windy series of roads that starts you off once you exit San Francisco. Along the coastline, you wind your way down towards Pacifica, where there is, most notably to some, what is considered the premier Taco Bell location in the country. It is a Taco Bell cantina on the beach with a beautiful view. But our journey doesn't stop here. Although we were hungry as we rode down the road, we knew that we had plans for lunch. A barbecue restaurant in El Granada, and that first, to earn that Michelin recommended meal, we were going to have to travel significantly further. Well, fairly, perhaps just another 30 minutes beyond. But 30 minutes down is also 30 minutes back, putting lunch at least a full hour away in the shortest of imaginable timelines. Up the windy road out of Pacifica, through the long tunnel past where Devil's Slide used to be, and then tumbling down the coast past Moss Landing, Half Moon Bay, and further to get to the pumpkin patch where we intended to acquire our pumpkins. It was a quadruple of us, 2 couples, eager to acquire some gourds of the moment, and excited to appreciate the lovely summerly weather that we were getting on this fine day. The drive all the way down past Half Moon Bay is often very sunny and pretty when you catch it just right. It also has the possibility of being the mistiest of drives you've ever been on, unless you've also been to Scotland. But on this day it was beautiful and sunny. And we passed on the Taco Bell, as I said. And further on we went. We did indeed pass our intended lunch destination, a roadside barbecue place that was highly recommended and written about, and some have said one of the best barbecue places outside of the barbecue capitals of the United States. and said so, I'm told, by people from those places. Now, immediately beyond that barbecue restaurant, there's a kind of access road that Google recommended that we take, and it runs parallel to the one, and as long as I believe that I've traveled this road in my life, I'm pretty certain that, speaking generally, on a very beautiful day, that access road is the way that you want to go, believe me. Because you see, at this point in El Granada, there is an unusually placed traffic light. And the traffic light basically stops traffic in both directions on a quote-unquote highway that is only one lane in either direction. So this access road, it doesn't get you past the light. And perhaps someday the people of El Granada can figure out a way to make that a possibility. Instead, it's merely another road that takes you to the light. In fact, it takes you onto the road that intersects the freeway. If it weren't for this road, we probably wouldn't need the light in the first place. But yet, because of the on-again, off-again movement of the traffic, it is not uncommon for that access road to be the faster path to the light itself because of how many people just stay on the main freeway. And traffic was really slowing down as we hit the intersection where you turn off of the freeway. And it seemed like a good idea. But unfortunately, I would say we made it about halfway. Maybe 2/3. Not impossibly 3/4 of the way to the light when we hit a dead stop. In fact, as we looked to our right, there was a clearing, a dirt, possibly even overflow parking lot for people going to the beach. It wasn't very full, but it had some folks under a pop-up tent that were grilling something. Not sure. But in that moment, ahead of us, a white pickup truck peeled off of the road, crossed that lot, and got to where it could wait to join the southbound traffic on the one in parallel to our road, clearly frustrated that this shortcut wasn't short enough. And as we watched it wait, we thought, perhaps that person is making the wrong decision. And then a couple minutes later, we thought, I think that person made the right decision. In any case, it was a lovely day. And I found it interesting to sit next to, on the opposite side of the road, what was, to my eye and limited memory, a relatively recently rebuilt or refurbished coastal fire station. It looked very new. and I'm sure I've driven past it many times, but I couldn't remember it in that condition. It looked like untouched. And it wasn't a fire station the way you would normally think of a fire station. It was, it had a rustic look to it, still modern, but like some stone foundation, slanted roofs, with a kind of greenish aqua, I want to say, paneling that was maybe wood themed. It reminded me of what you'll see if you go to like a national park and they have new buildings, but they want to make them look like they belong in the forest. Well, this isn't in the forest, this is along the coast, but it was a nice looking firehouse. And as I said, I had a decent amount of time to pay attention to it. And it was also relatively placid. There was nothing going on. There wasn't like an event happening. Although we had seen signs for both an autumn festival, which would be a different weekend, and then another festival. Maybe it was a pumpkin festival. Maybe I have these backwards. I think the fall festival might have been in Half Moon Bay on a different weekend, and then this other festival was the same weekend, but we didn't know where it was because we didn't pay that close attention to the signs. And I noticed that there was this little clearly curated like sidewalk footpath that came off of the main road and sloped down towards the parking lot of the firehouse. And I think it might have had a bench in it, like in a circle, like the sidewalk came off the road, did a little loop to a little circle area, and then off of that loop was the rest of the sidewalk going to the fire station parking lot. And I think there was a bench there, and I might be wrong, and perhaps I should have taken a photo to better inform all of you of the accuracy of what I'm saying. But I did also notice that along this sidewalk, looping, curling sidewalk to where may have been a bench, were also these little like plaques that were on stands, like little podiums. And I think they were somewhere along the path, and maybe another one was at the center. I mean, not in the center of the concrete, but along the edge of the circle in the center. And I have no idea what those were. They could have been informational signage. I mean, presumably they were informational in some way, because they looked like they were there for a purpose and probably had some form of writing. And I tried to imagine what they might be, and I thought one could be, because the whole facility looked new, it could be dedications of either from people who donated to for the new fire department, or maybe it was commemorating past firefighters. They could also have been informational about the region, maybe the history of the fire station was a possibility, maybe something about the town history, maybe I thought there could be some nature history, but that's sort of what I'm generally attuned to when I see informational signage, because I mostly see that informational signage while on hikes or driving far away in national parks, and that's where you get a sizable amount of informational signage. It definitely seems like an unusual spot, though, to have nature or wildlife informational signage, because it's kind of just on this access road next to a fire station. And although the coast is, very beautiful and has hiking trails all up and down it, and then if you even went across the freeway from where this was, you would get to a big open field with sporadic benches with just a view of the ocean. So, but those things are on the other side of the freeway, and I don't think very convenient from that spot. I think you have to work your way down there. I don't know if there's like a direct pedestrian path. So it would be a strange place to note what the kind of possible regional wildlife would be when you were there. Perhaps at another time we can explore what regional wildlife may have been on these informational signs. But in the meantime, eventually, the traffic jam ended, we got through the light, and we're on our way to the giant pumpkin patch. Now, it's worth noting that there are a number of opportunities along the coast between San Francisco and Santa Cruz, California, where you will have the opportunity to not only buy pumpkins, but an array of different produce grown locally in the region. A farm stand I like to stop at, if you're heading south, is the first place to get the pumpkins, although we usually pick up produce when we're coming north on our way home. And that one is a modest patch with everything you would expect of your garden variety orange pumpkins. And then as you travel further down the coast, you tend to encounter more and more serious pumpkin purveyors. Along the right side of the road, there are a pair that are backed up right against each other, and they seem to join forces, so to speak, and combine into a bit of a destination. They have their different ways of presenting. One is very carefully curated with very specific piles, and then the other one is a little bit more meandering. And then one of the two, although I'm not sure which, also has a corn maze. We ourselves have not tried out the corn maze, but it's there. I imagine it's different every year. So I would eventually be curious to try it out. However, on this day in question, we were on our way to the more distant pumpkin patch, the destination pumpkin patch along the freeway, along California 1. Now, we were coming down the road a bit after lunchtime, and I think we hit it just about right, because this place that we went to is really a destination for the region. It's even a sort of event space, and it's very easy to see from the road, and they have a number of statues and things that you can see, and what stands out the most is that the property is depressed from the highway, and so as you're driving by you can see over the top of their always impressive hay maze. And as we were approaching, of course, we saw the maze, and were delighted to notice that it wasn't super busy. The parking lot was definitely filling up, but in times past we've gone there and found that you had to go to overflow parking. And here we made our way into the parking lot, paid the parking fee, as this place is the sort of destination that charges for parking, and parked quite a long way towards the end of the parking lot. Then walked our way back, and as we approach, we go through the archway to Arata's farm. Now this place has a lot going on. It's got so much going on that you can get a bracelet pass to do all of the things that there are to do. I forget how much it is. And we didn't get it this time because we weren't planning on doing a lot of things. Right when you walk up, you can see there's a slightly more kids section that has a pony ride area. So they've got pony rides. That's the first thing you see. And then when you walk in, there's a kind of like old westy looking storefront corral area that is where they sell tickets to things, and the checkout counter specifically for pumpkins. There are hand pull wagons everywhere for you to grab and then walk around with to pick up your pumpkins. Immediately on your left when you go in, there's a little snack store that has kind of like a concessions area, you might say. They have coffee, they have refrigerators for cold drinks, like sodas and waters, and then they have an array of snacks that you can purchase. It's not like hot food. And then there is a central area that is covered that I think might be used from time to time for cooking classes, because it seemed like this central table that a lot of pumpkins were piled up on had burners on it, but they weren't active. Sort of a large gazebo, maybe. And an area for picnic tables in another direction. And then directly ahead, I think a patch of corn that had like a few lanes carved out of it. And there's a small tram, I want to say like train-themed tram that goes through it for rides for little kids. There's a larger hay bale ride that also pulled by a tractor that goes around the entire property. That's another thing. All these things are tickets you have to pay for, or again the wristband. So in this gazebo area, there was that table that I was talking about that had, I think, the burners for the cooking class, and they had put out a lot of these smaller, more manageable gourds, little guys, weird-looking little guys. And then shortly before that, actually, as you were walking in to the gazebo area, there was a large table with stalks of fresh Brussels sprouts. Now, we definitely planned on picking up one of those, but not yet. And further beyond, but closer than that little train area, were maybe 3-ish sections of apparently curated, very, very weird looking pumpkins and gourds. One pile was all light green, fleshy looking, like they look rotten. We like to call them the zombie pumpkins. Then there was another section that had one I'll talk about a little later that I think was wild. And what I won't be able to describe this very well, so I may need to post this on Instagram and maybe the YouTube community tab, because I'm not sure how to explain it, or I'll try to explain it and then you can tell me if I did a good job or not. But the first order of business, because we're a group of very grown-up people, was to go and do the hay maze. We had not done the hay maze before. This was a first time, and I was very excited to do it, because I'll say that for as long as I've lived in this region, I have seen this hay maze from the road, but never gone in it. This was a big first-time experience, and very welcome as an opportunity to try it out. So the hay maze, I'd say the walls are about, probably on average, about 6 feet high, maybe a little bit higher. If you're tall, you could see over sometimes because of the uneven ground. The hay bales are very substantial. At all times, it seems, there's a staff member in a reflective jacket walking along the top of the maze, keeping an eye out for people. And then there's also a guard tower that's just on the outside of the hay maze that also has a view into it. I would say it's to keep an eye out for kids being mischievous or getting lost, but this was even a challenging maze for adults, and I think, you could get stuck in there. Although there were from time to time on the outer edges exit opportunities if you couldn't take it anymore. Now we went in, and as you go in, there's like a entry area that presents to you 4 different passageways to take, and you have to pick one. We went with, I think, the 3rd passageway from the left, and began our journey into the hay maze. very luckily it was a nice day, beautiful out, and we traipsed our way through for a little bit. Not super methodical about it. From all of my years playing video games, even very early games I can remember, like Dungeon Master on the Amiga, and then probably before that, like The Legend of Zelda. There were just some games that I played growing up that really insisted that you have a good sense of direction or a borderline pathological memory of where you would come or how you would come from, what direction, where you were going, where you had been or where you hadn't been before. And so I have a pretty good directional instinct. And then, of course, there's the kind of relative wisdom to make a choice when you take a passageway, whether you want to follow the left wall or the right wall. And when you do that, you'll theoretically not get lost. You won't retrace your steps incorrectly, or you won't. You'll be able to eliminate every possibility by making those decisions. We didn't do that, but there were maybe a few portions where we did that. I don't think that it was necessarily helpful to take that approach, because I do think we saw almost the entire maze. Not to get too spoilery on the subject matter. Now we moved through sort of to the right side of the maze, and we came around to a point where we came to an opening. And the opening had an archway, and we were able to see the archway from other parts of the maze. And it was this rectangular area with archway exits in 4 directions, and there were definitely some people milling about that were lost. And one thing that was consistent throughout this experience was that you would encounter other people, and they would almost invariably be talking about how they think they've tried a different direction or another direction already, to give you the idea that it is easy to get lost in this maze. Although I will hazard that probably on average many of these cases were adults following their kids around, letting the kids solve the maze. This rectangular area had in it these large metal giraffe sculptures. I thought that was interesting. I failed at this time to take a picture of them, but we picked a passage and moved on. And as we were traveling from this point, we saw over a few sets of walls a looming statue of a minotaur in the same style, a kind of like rusty iron looking statue, this one holding a sword. And we thought, well, we've got to get to that minotaur. Which we did. We went a bit around through the center of the maze, tracked out back towards the far back wall, and then curved into where the minotaur was. And there we got a picture. And then we left the Minotaur area, trying to figure out where the next section would be. And we came back to the Minotaur. And then we, I think, came back to the Minotaur again. And we began to feel with some certainty that the exit would need to be on the outer rim, and that if we tracked out to the outer rim via the far left side of the maze, that we would probably find a really long passageway to the exit. At least that's the idea I had in mind. And we tried that. But instead, we found our way out to close to the edge, near the guard tower. But instead, another Minotaur. This one, I think, had an axe on its shoulder. And we took a picture of that. And then we hugged that wall as best we could, but just got into dead ends and decided that we would have to go back to the rectangular room, find our way back there, which indeed we did. And at that time, I took the opportunity to take a picture of one of the giraffes. So I was a little bit pleased that we were back at the giraffe room, and from what we could tell, had at this point seen all of the statues. And to be frank, at this point also, we're about ready to get out of the maze. And we had tried 3 of the 4 path options that weren't the way we found into the giraffe room, and decided to go in that direction. It was a matter of a process of elimination, and believing that in any given direction on the other paths we were likely to simply find our way back to the giraffe room. As we learned as we had originally tried, I guess I left this out, we had tried 2 of the other paths, and they were how we came back to the Minotaur for the 3rd time. But not discouraged at this point. We went in this final exit rectangular way and begin to sort of collect some more people who were also thinking that they had discovered potentially the way out. And indeed, it was the way out. We found a narrow passageway, and it led to an opening, and there was a crew member dressed as a Minotaur to greet us on the way out. All in all, we were able to solve that maze, I believe, in about 30 minutes. But I'll tell you, it felt a lot longer. And I would say it was worth it. I did have a mild tingling in my hands, I think, from all of the hay. I don't usually think of myself as someone with like a hay allergy, but I guess when you're in a hay maze, you are very, very exposed to it. And that faded after we went outside. But we did it. We felt pretty good about that. And now it was time to go and hunt a pumpkin. We didn't start out with a hand cart. Instead, we walked past the corn area where the train was, and that leaves open to a path that takes you to a cornfield, and the cornfield has fresh corn in it. We didn't take any, although I thought about it. I wondered what they would say to us. There were no signs that said you could pick the corn. And I feel like if you could pick the corn, there would be a lot less of it because of just the volume of people that were going to this place. It seemed like if you could pick the corn and take it home, the place would be barren. But there was corn kind of everywhere. In hindsight, I wish I had taken some of the corn, because I do like corn, especially fresh corn. Maybe we're past corn season, maybe this wouldn't be that good, but it is on the stalk. I have to imagine it's pretty decent. I'm not a super big expert on corn quality, corn season, that kind of stuff. I just know that when it's at the farmer's market and we bring it home, it's so amazing. And I've always been a corn fan. I can't recall if I've talked about that before with you, but I do love fresh corn. I love corn on the cob. We had pretty good corn when I was a kid. You know, I grew up on the East Coast in Philadelphia. My parents and my family from New Jersey, so we had Jersey corn. So it wasn't like I didn't have corn as a kid. As a kid, though, I just thought really all there was to it was it gets boiled and then covered in butter and salt. And probably to this day, that's still my favorite way to eat the corn. But now, you know, when it's corn season, there's just so many things you can do. Really, fresh corn is delicious. I didn't know that as a kid. I always thought the scene in War Games was funny, where they're having raw corn for dinner, and the father asks why can't we cook the corn and take vitamins instead of just eating it raw. But truly fresh corn, good fresh corn, is delicious when it's fresh and raw. A corn salsa is a great thing. And even you can put the fresh corn in a salad. Yeah, corn is really great. I've had not great corn still be good when you're having it on the cob and just still dousing it in butter and salt. And then it wasn't until I was a lot older that I found out about the various Hispanic things like elote or esquites, which are just make my heart happy. And that's without even talking about all of the corn products out there. I am I am a Doritos fan, and I am a Cheetos fan. A lot of the really not good for you corn products I do appreciate. Although I do try to avoid as much corn syrup as possible. But fresh corn is really good. And it does remind me that we have a corn chowder recipe. I think I have talked about that before. It's more of a winter thing, and you're supposed to use canned corn and cream corn to make it. I wonder what it would be like with fresh corn, but it's creamy. It doesn't feel like a corn season type of dish. And I honestly haven't made it in years, so I'm going to have to put that on the list for this winter. And hopefully I can update you about whether I've been successful in getting to the corn chowder. So carved out of or shorn out of, I'm not sure how to put this, but in the middle of the cornfield is a zigzaggy path that's probably about 10 feet wide. Maybe wider, maybe 3 yards, maybe 15 feet, a few meters. And what they do is they just put pumpkins in the middle of this path, and it makes and these are all the orange classic pumpkins, and it makes this windy pumpkin road through the cornfield. And it's definitely like an Instagram worthy kind of thing. And here you can just walk along sort of the side of the pumpkin road and look for your favorite new pumpkin. And we walked this road. We didn't have the handcart yet, but my partner did find a pretty perfect one and chose to hold on to it. And I held her coffee cup. And we went to the end and back, and I saw one on the way down that seemed pretty perfect, but then I noticed it was a little scratched up on one side, and I wasn't sure if we'd be coming back this way. But when we did, I was very happy because I was able to grab that pumpkin that I thought was really nice. These are very classic ones. These are like, orange and round. Maybe not super tall, like not exactly head-shaped, but still pumpkins. Still what you think of as a pumpkin. And at the time of this recording, we haven't carved our pumpkins yet because we're still a little bit away, but these would be the ones for that. So after we worked our way back from the pumpkin road and past, there's also an amphitheater that's like next to the hedge maze that's also made out of hay, and a string of picnic tables, and there's some pumpkins there too. There's pumpkins everywhere. This is as I said, a pumpkin destination. If you find yourself in California and you're on the coast near San Francisco or Santa Cruz, you've got some options. So now we did decide it was time to get the wagon. And when we went up to the front, there weren't any. And we asked if we could get one, and sure enough, there was a fellow there said he had just found one, and he brought it over to us, and he joked that it was $10. I thought that was very funny, and believed him for definitely like a moment there, because they charge for a lot of things at this place. And I don't totally resent it, because they have quite a lot of staff and there's a lot of effort that goes into it. I didn't mention this at the top, but according to their list of things you can get tickets for, there's also a haunted house. I don't know anything about the haunted house, but there is one. And I am a fan of the occasional haunted house. Although now we have been truly spoiled. In San Francisco, there is something called Terror Vault, which is a annual haunted house experience that is at the old Mint in downtown San Francisco, and they use this entire property to build a haunted house, and it's very wild. It looks like a very big, like, government building with like the Corinthian pillars when you walk in, and then they take you into the basement, and then the haunted house happens, and it's a like, I want to say fully immersive, probably hour-long play that every year has a different theme. It's really spectacular. They put a lot of effort into it, and it's the main namesake for it is Peaches Christ, the drag queen of San Francisco, the premier drag queen of San Francisco, who I like to say gave me my first job when I was in high school, or fresh out of high school, at a movie theater, where I also met a couple of my other friends that were still friends today. So definitely have to thank Peaches Christ for that, and putting on every year the most bananas haunted house you've ever seen. And it is probably like $60, I want to say. It's a real price of a ticket, but it is a real show. So if you're ever in San Francisco in October, I highly recommend checking that out. And so we got our wagon, and we went right away to that big table that I mentioned earlier that was that had the Brussels sprouts, and we picked out a stalk of Brussels sprouts. It's really wild how they grow on this big, thick stalk. And you know, when you have a bowl of them or a plate of them, they seem somewhat like cumbersome as a vegetable, but when they're on this super thick stalk, they almost look tiny. But they come on a really long, really thick stalk. You could use it as a baseball bat. And so we grabbed a stalk, and there we had our pull cart with two handsome orange pumpkins and a stalk of Brussels sprouts. And from here we proceeded to tour the smaller gourds for a moment, those funky little ones. And then decided that we would come back to those last, because those would sort of complement whatever our final purchases were. And we went around the outside of the gazebo, which had a sort of tiered hay bales with more pumpkins basically on the ground, one level up and one level above that. And right around the outside there of the gazebo was a row or two of a kind that I try to get one of every year. I've long been a David Cronenberg fan, the Canadian filmmaker who makes science fiction horror movies, and there are pumpkins that remind me of his films because they are flesh-like. They, not to the touch, to the touch they're like a regular pumpkin, but they look like human skin. And I always need to get one of those. And right about at the same time, my partner and I spotted one that looked just right. But we didn't get it into the cart right away. I think I wanted to find one that was smaller because it was frankly not a very modest pumpkin. And, you know, you get a big pumpkin, you gotta get rid of a big pumpkin. And I mean, like this is a big pumpkin, I'm gonna say by city standards. You know, maybe your suburban pumpkin is bigger, that goes on your porch. So I wanted to check out some other ones, and we went over to the zombie pile. Didn't get a zombie, didn't get one of the Zambo pumpkins this year. They are always fun to look at though, because they are just gross looking. Very similar, that they, you know, to the touch they're just regular pumpkins, but their color and they have a little shine to them. They look like zombies. Look like they might be rotting, but they're not. So it was about this time that I saw that there was this table of various, I think, pumpkins. This is where I'm not sure. This is the thing I'm going to have to post a picture of. I found this pumpkin that I suppose if you squinted and stepped away, it might look a little bit like the classic image of a mushroom, like a white base with a red top on it. It looked a little like that. The stem of the pumpkin came out of the red part on top, but it also looked like the red part was like a parasite, like a creature that had latched onto a white pumpkin and was eating it. And then at the same time, it also looked like this sort of alien relationship could be the other way around, and that the white part was extracting itself from the red part. It looks like two different, and I'm not going to even say vegetables, I'm going to say it looked like two different, almost jellyfish-like creatures that were in conflict with one another. And so if you know me, that's an instant win for a weird gourd to bring home, is something that looks like out of a science fiction movie. So I had to get that one. I couldn't not get that one. into the cart it went. There were some additional ones that looked like alien eggs, like from the movie Alien. They were bulbous and had that kind of pebbly texture to them. I think we may have found a small one. But those ones were mostly pretty big. And again, you can only really go with one or two of the big ones that you like. You can't go crazy. So then it was roundabout back to the gazebo and to check out the little heirloomy ones that we were going to get and put on probably put as like a centerpiece on the table at home. And there we picked out a few different varieties. I found a squashy one that was all white with like white pebbles on it. And there was another one that I think was like green and yellow that changed colors. Just such a variety. I can't stress the variety well enough. You know, as I said, I grew up with the orange pumpkins and I thought that's what pumpkins were and that's it. And then here they have every color. They have every size. They have so many different shapes, it blows the mind. Green pumpkins, orange pumpkins, white pumpkins, different shades of green. Multicolored. Aliens eating other aliens. They're pretty great. So yeah, we picked out a nice small variety to icing on the cake the rest of it. And then we got all of those pumpkins together and gourds, whatever. If I'm honest, I'm not a huge expert on the differences. I've come a long way since trying to start naming vegetables I know, but I'm still not amazing. And so we checked out and brought our hand carts out to the parking lot and brought the car around and got those pumpkins in the car. Between the maze and the pumpkin road and picking out the pumpkins, we were all ready for lunch, which means we have about a 30-minute drive up the road to that Michelin recommended barbecue spot. Breakwater Barbecue is basically right on the one. It's in Granada, and it's got some outdoor seating and a smoker parked in the parking lot, which I think is a very good sign. Always a very good sign. I mean, I think would be, at least from my experience in California and Northern California, you'd be hard pressed to find a barbecue restaurant that is also very good that does not have in its parking lot a smoker on wheels. I feel like I've always seen it. This one was pretty fancy too. And there were some outdoor tables when we got there. They were full, but we still had to order our food. And this was my first time going there. Now, I'll say that I'm kind of medium on barbecue in general. And I will add that I didn't order some of the things that I should have. In part because the scuttlebutt was that this place has a great cheeseburger. And while I might be kind of medium in general on how I feel about barbecue, and I mean barbecue like, the plate of meat, the brisket, the ribs, the hot link, the cornbread, the full experience. I'm medium on that. But I love cheeseburgers. So I definitely had to order the cheeseburger. And in my infinite wisdom, I also ordered it as a double. And from there, my partner and I, we split some mac and cheese. And she got the fish tacos. And I ordered an additional hot link. And then as my side, I got the greens and beans, which has some of the brisket and hot link in it. And then our friends also got like a plate to split and a burger to split. So I did have some of the brisket. Everything was very tasty. The cheeseburger was very on point. The double patty was probably a bridge too far. I'll say this. I think that I wish there was like some kind of standard when it comes to the burger patty. Like there's the smash burger craze, and I personally like it. But a like classic smash burger that is like kind of in that realm of emulating the sort of fast casual roadside hamburger. The idea is that those patties aren't super big, so like ordering a double is like kind of the normal. And then ordering a single is like getting the small. But you don't know that when you walk into a burger place you haven't been to. You don't know whether it's like that, or if the single is normal and the double is the extra large. I'm not complaining so much, but I like to have a good ratio of patty to bread and patty to other ingredients. But this one was very good. Shredded lettuce, American cheese, a house sort of pickle slaw, which I think some of the best cheeseburgers I've had have been with that in mind. Thinly sliced, very, very thinly sliced or shaved pickles that are probably a quick pickle. A house sauce of some variety. It was messy. It was a messy burger, but again, it was super delicious. The cornbread was very dense, almost like a cake, like a dense, I want to say like a zucchini cake kind of density with some corn in it, and it was so good. I like it like that. There's a place for every kind of cornbread. Maybe I say this as someone who confessed a little earlier how much I like corn, but any type of cornbread can be great. We don't have to be too judgmental. But a nice dense one, it's a treat because it's not very common. Usually you get the fluffy stuff that's more like a cupcake, and don't get me wrong, I love that too. The mac and cheese I rather enjoyed as well. It was the cheese sauce was the sort of bechamel style, which is great, on the thin side but very tasty, and then the whole top of the mac serving was dusted with seasonings, and I mean, it's hard to go wrong. It was a good mac and cheese as far as I'm concerned. I ate more of it later. I think part of why I'm not a big barbecue person is because I will say I'm a big hot dog person, and you know this about me. And I, in general, like very tasty tubed meats. A good sausage and the right bun and toppings, or even if it's really good, you don't need them, can really blow you away. But the kind of traditional barbecue hot link is usually like ground up smoked and not super juicy. It's more in the realm of like, a dried meat. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's still super good. I just always sort of have it in my mind that when I go to a place that's really, really meat forward, that I always want to try whatever they're doing with a sausage to see like how they work with all of their flavors. So I have to try the sausage. And this one was good. I will say it was delicious. I ate the whole thing over the course of a day and a half. And it was nice and spicy. But when you compare it to the like decadence of a fatty, tender slice of brisket, it's not close. And I get that. I understand that there are probably some places where the sausage is the hero, but I feel like by and large your barbecue places are going to be focused on the primary cooked proteins, and that sausage is second fiddle no matter what. Whereas if you go to a sausage place, it's another story. But this was good. I'm not trying to downplay it. Now, what did rock me, though, was the beans and greens. This was like, there were some white beans. I believe it was collard greens, but it was something substantial. It was a heavy leaf in a broth with pulled, I think it was probably maybe the pastrami they make. They did have a Reuben sandwich. I'd have to double check, but that plus bits of the link sausage was in there. Just homey, hearty, stick to your bones, just lovely, luscious. It was so good. And then also, they had a hot sauce on the table that was really thin, and it was it was carrot based. I don't know if it was a carrot habanero, which there's a burrito place by our house that does a carrot habanero, that does seafood burritos, and it's the most amazing pairing ever. This was different. This was more vinegary, less carrot forward, but a little sweet and delicious. And I'm definitely more of the vinegar side of like barbecue sauce. So I found this sauce to be amazing. I poured it all over the greens and beans, poured it on the mac and cheese, and then like when we were all done eating, I had to find out if they bottled it, if I could get a bottle. And I went back in and I asked if I could buy some, because if you looked at the menu, they had pricing for it. So I thought, oh, they'll sell a bottle. And they said, oh, we don't have bottles, we'll have to put it in a container. $5. I thought, nah, that's fine, it's delicious. Paid the $5, and then they hand me one of those buzzers. I had to wait for it to come out of the kitchen. But then I got it in my deli cup. And then that was our experience at the barbecue place. It was a beautiful day out, a little too windy. A crisp beer to go with lunch. And then we were all stuffed, ready for a nap, and to head back up the coast home. So there we have our Amiable Amble on autumn gourd acquisition. There were a lot of points in there, and I'd like to hear from you. Have you gone pumpkin shopping this year? Depending on when you hear this, did you go? And what kind of pumpkins did you get? Have you been in various kinds of mazes? What's the best maze you've been in? And then, of course, always feel free to leave me a comment about food. It doesn't need to be about barbecue. And if you want to leave me a comment about barbecue on a video that has nothing about barbecue in it, you are welcome to. But for now, if you'd like to leave a comment, if you have thoughts about mazes and pumpkins and cheeseburgers and barbecue, beautiful coastal drives, let me know. And we'll leave it here for this amiable episode. I want to thank you all, dear resters, for continuing to listen to this podcast, even during the long hiatuses I tend to take. I do think of you all the time. I hope as well that you have been adequately rambled to rest and are not hearing what I am saying right now. However, if for some reason you are conscious at this time, I will leave you with these parting words. Sack, slip, discovery, excited, pretty, glow, zebra, jelly, and sponge. Thank you again. I am your host, Ryan. Music has been by Disparition. And until we meet again, may your days be stress-free and your night be restful.